Hey everyone, I hope you're well. This is the story about what if Naruto formed a Jinchuuriki Alliance. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. So without any further ado, let's start the what if. Sasuke told me about the cursed mark. Naruto looked upwards and blinked as Kakashi stood, leaned on the side of the doorway. Oh, Naruto spoke, not really knowing how to answer. Yeah, I'm fine though. No, you're not. Kakashi sighed and walked towards him. Naruto was still in the hospital room and was actually waiting for Gaara and Fu to come back so they could continue talking. He wasn't expecting Kakashi to come by. Firstly, that mark is dangerous, so I'm going to a seal on it so it doesn't take over your body. Kakashi put his hands up in a jutsu which alerted Kurama inside Naruto's mind. No! We cannot handle another seal while trying to get rid of this one. Kurama shouted, in a hurry. Naruto winced at the sound and put his hands up. No. What? Kakashi asked, confused. I don't need it, answered Naruto. Kakashi growled at the constant disrespect, and finally, letting his anger control him, he grabbed Naruto's arm and roughly pulled him forward. But before he could do anything else, he felt himself flat on the floor. Thinking that it was an enemy ninja, he looked up and was met with the blazing jade eyes of the red-headed Jinchuriki from Suna. What are you doing here? He said he didn't need it. Gaara spoke calmly. Which means that you won't give it to him. Kakashi stood up. Gaara was standing in front of Naruto, which was a bit comical because Gaara was the shorter one of the two. Naruto was standing behind Gaara with a raised eyebrow. I'm trying to save Naruto. Kakashi reasoned. Well, I don't need your help. Naruto rolled his eyes. Trust me, I'm handling the cursed mark fine by myself. It will be gone soon. He reminded his sensei. Kakashi exhaled and let his shoulders drop. Fine. He turned on his heel and walked out of the room in silence. Gaara turned back to look at Naruto with a raised non-existent eyebrow. Naruto just shrugged. Naruto treaded slowly while staring straight ahead of him, tilting his head to the side to crack the joint, and then he sighed. After the group of Jinchurikis had dispersed and returned back to where they had to be, and Kakashi had visited Naruto, he was quickly discharged a couple of hours later from the hospital and went home. As he was met with the door of his apartment, he saw a bouquet of flowers and another fruit basket, much like the one that was sitting on his bedside table in the hospital. He lifted the two objects and pushed open the door with his foot. It was already unlocked, and was only unlocked for him, or more specifically, his chakra signature. Gaara also had his chakra signature added onto the seal, and so had Fu and Yagura. So they were able to access his home as they wished. If anyone else attempted to, they wouldn't be allowed entrance. The door shut quietly and he placed the flowers and fruit basket onto the dinner table. He pulled a chair and exhaled, and he plopped himself down onto it. Pulling his legs upwards, adjusted his seating position so he was sitting cross-legged on the chair. Pulling the fruit basket towards him, he opened the little note that was placed meaningfully in between the cherries and apples. Dear Naruto, I hope you're feeling alright. I wanted to thank you again for helping me. Get better soon. Sakura. Naruto smiled under his breath. She's acting like I'm sick. I'm already better. He chuckled, but the thought was there. P.S. Sasuke wants to say thanks too, but he's too much of an idiot to say it out loud. Naruto nodded. Yeah, sounds about right. He thought with a laugh. Naruto dutifully raised the handle of the basket and pushed the note back inside the place it was before. He glanced at the flowers with a puzzled expression. If the fruit was from Sakura, it wasn't likely that the flowers were from Sasuke. Sasuke didn't do that kind of emotional crap. He reached over the table to the flowers with an audible groan and pulled it towards him. They were sunflowers, and there was a note. He reached for it and unfolded it. Bisama and Gaara-san notified me of everything. I accept. Akane. Naruto blinked and grinned. He didn't think Gaara could do his job so promptly, and it was even easier because Akane was part of the Kyuubi team, and B was from Kyuubi too. Instantly, Naruto laughed and thought about how ridiculous it was that he thought he was the only Uzumaki left. Of course, that wasn't probably because the Uzumakis used to be a large clan, but finally meeting another Uzumaki made him think that there were probably many other Uzumakis left. Akane had been the first Uzumaki he had ever met, and this gave him some hope. Naruto blinked as he remembered that they theoretically had Zabuza and Haku on their side as well, since Yagura asked for them to help with the war. He grinned as the list of strong and helpful people who were on their side increased. He shook his head from these thoughts and stood to put the flowers in a vase. When realizing that he didn't have a vase, because he didn't have much money and no one had gotten him flowers before, and Akane probably only got flowers because it wasn't conspicuous, he stood in silence by the table. He grunted, not knowing where to put the flowers. Just put them in a cup or something, I need to talk to you. Naruto heard Kurama's booming voice and shrugged, grabbing a tall glass and pouring some water into it. He then dropped the flowers into the cup and winced when a splash of water hit his wrist. Sighing, he gently placed the glass of flowers on the table and walked over to his bed. What's wrong? Naruto asked mentally. I've been trying to find out what the cursed seal mark does to your body. I've been conducting a few tests in your mindscape and I think you should see this. Kurama spoke gravely. Naruto bit his lip. He knew Kurama's tone of voice and knew that it wasn't anything good. Give me a second. He thought, as he sat down cross-legged on his bed, he exhaled and shut his eyes. Meditating was the easiest way for him to go into his mindscape, so that is what he dutifully did. Once Naruto felt his body pulsate and everything felt softer and not as real, he opened his eyes and they instantly widened. Kurama stood in all of his nine-tailed glory, staring with a bit of regret down at Naruto. What? Naruto spluttered, what the hell did you do? He shouted, thrusting a hand towards the burnt grass and rubble all over his mindscape. Kurama had the decency to look sheepish. Well. Naruto shot a piercing glare at Kurama and felt his blood boil. You absolute idiot. Look what you did to our mind. It's going to take ages to fix. Naruto pointed to the grass and gasped at the ditch-like trench about 20 meters away from him. It's not that bad. Kurama reasoned. Not that bad? I don't know how we're going to heal that stupid-ass trench, I'm going to trip over it whenever I come and visit you. Naruto shouted and waved his hands around in distress. Yeah. Sorry about that. Kurama chuckled. And don't get me started on how much mental fertilizer I'm going to have to conjure up to make the grass luscious again. Naruto ranted. His mindscape was his pride and joy, and it was now ruined. I was conducting some tests. Kurama started. Kurama knew how much Naruto's mindscape meant to him, because he was one of the few that could actually go into his own mindscape. Usually only Jinchurikis and extremely high-level ninja were able to go into their mindscapes. Conducting some tests? Naruto yelled at Kurama. Do you know how long it took to change my mindscape to a beautiful field and horizon? It used to be a sewer. A goddamn sewer. And I understand that, Kit, I do. But I tried to use some of my own chakra, and it didn't seem to work. Kurama swiftly changed the subject from the trashed mindscape. What do you mean you tried to use your own chakra? You know if we use your chakra that the sky will change into a orange-red color. Skies are blue, not red. Naruto hissed. No, I know that I can't use my chakra on healing our mindscape. Kurama mended his words. I meant that I tried to use my chakra to destroy the cursed seal, and my chakra wasn't accessible. Naruto paused. Your chakra wasn't accessible? As in, you can't use it? At Kurama's nod, Naruto's grin widened and he laughed. How interesting. Where is the cursed seal? Kurama exhaled in relief and chuckled at his predicament. He swiped a tail and motioned to a pillar in the middle of the mindscape. It's got a snake wrapped around it. Nodding, Naruto walked towards it and studied it from up close. When he reached his destination, he looked up at the pillar. It was about 10 meters tall and a meter wide. It had a snake wrapped around it. It seemed to be sleeping. The snake was a pasty white and its tongue kept hissing and tightened its hold on the pillar. Naruto grimaced. It looks like Orochimaru. As if by command, the snake awoke and whipped out to attack Naruto. Naruto took a quick step back and raised an eyebrow. If you're going to be making yourself at home, you might as well pay some rent. The snake hissed quietly and retracted to the pillar. But you have to leave because I can't use Kurama's chakra with you here. Naruto told it. He then smirked and leaned forward, so please, fuck off. He said politely with a smile. You know you're talking to a snake, right? Naruto heard Kurama's booming laugh and rolled his eyes. If Kurama's chakra can't destroy it, what about mine? Naruto thought out loud. He lifted one of his hands and spoke, Futon, Kaze no Jutsu. Wind arrow technique. Naruto took in a deep breath and blew out, and although it was invisible, there was a faint outline of an arrow being created. He then quickly blew it out and it soared and sliced at the pillar. The snake wrapped around it swatted at the wind arrow and wasn't hurt at all. So my chakra works, but I just need to find a way to destroy the pillar. He said, hearing Kurama's grunt of acknowledgement. Destroy it. Kurama said simply. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be able to destroy it as they have to go into their mindscape to destroy it. Thankfully, we have an accessible mindscape, so you can destroy it. He spoke. Naruto nodded. With a soft exhale, Naruto lifted both of his hands. Fuinjutsu trap. The snake sprung awake at the feeling of its movements being restricted and it whipped its head upwards and suddenly multiple boulders detached itself from the ground and shot its way towards Naruto. You're using my own mindscape against me? Bad idea. Naruto chuckled and lifted a hand, feeling all of the mental power he had and thrusting his hand back at the pillar. The rocks stopped at their place and went backwards. With a grin, Naruto slapped his hands together, Futon, de Tapa. Great breakthrough. Naruto then heard multiple cracks and he turned to look back at the pillar. The snake's head warped into different shapes and sizes until it stopped on a pale and pasty structure. Sharp cheekbones and a long face. The rest of its body also started cracking and the bones extended and elongated. Naruto stared with a frown and displeasure clearly marked on his face. Orochimaru. He spoke with a bitter tone. The snake had transformed into a carbon copy of Orochimaru. It didn't reply, but instead held onto the pillar with the bottom half of its body, and it somehow made the top half of its body stretch and attack Naruto. You have truly become a snake, congratulations. Naruto said sarcastically, hearing Kurama's booming laughter. Kurama hadn't stepped into the battle yet because he wasn't able to, he didn't have the use of his chakra currently, so there was no point. Yet. Futon, Hajinkaru no Jutsu, Wind Element, Great Wind Blast, ... Naruto said again, pushing his hands towards the pillar and groaning when Orochimaru raised his head and a sword shot out of his mouth. Naruto grimaced and used a Futon Jutsu to push the sword away from him, frowning when he was a second too late and the sword cut his arm. Jumping away and slowly gliding to the ground as he dropped, he glanced at his arm and raised an eyebrow. Watching as Orochimaru retracted back to the pillar, Naruto hummed in delight. It doesn't attack when I'm far. So how about a long-range jutsu? If we combine our chakra, we can create a Bijidama. Kurama spoke. The snake has been here too long that it's starting to stink up our mindscape. He spat. Naruto laughed, but I thought you couldn't use your chakra. Not by myself, but if you call it up, I think I can force it out. Kurama reasoned. Naruto nodded and shut his eyes, raising a hand upwards. He faced his palm towards Orochimaru and the pillar, feeling a shallow glimmer of dark and bubbling chakra in the pit of his stomach and smirked. Found it. He found Kurama's chakra and pushed it out of himself, feeding it to the Kyuubi. Kurama opened up his mouth and slowly widened it as a dark purple chakra was gathering itself in his massive jaw. Soon enough, Kurama's jaw looked like it was unhinged with the sheer amount of chakra bubbling inside it. Naruto snapped open his eyes, now. And on command, Kurama jerked his head forward and his jaw shut as the Baijidama shot out and soared towards the pillar. They simply waited as the Baijidama hit the ground with full force and made an explosion occur. A few seconds passed as the smoke cleared the area. Naruto tilted his head and sighed, well, that was anticlimactic. Kit! Naruto's eyes snapped open and he clenched his teeth as Orochimaru was practically flying towards him. Naruto's brain hotwired and his mind was blank. Once Orochimaru had become closer towards him, Naruto pulled his fist up and focused chakra into his hand. Gritting his teeth, Naruto swung with full force at Orochimaru's face and instantly released all of the chakra in his fist when his hand connected with skin. Orochimaru got sent back flying and hit the ground with a harsh thump. Naruto heard multiple bones cracking and stared in shock at his fist. He didn't know how he did that, he just focused his chakra. He's been destroyed. Kurama spoke. Whatever that was, Kit, you killed the snake with it. Naruto gawked at the place that the pillar was. The pillar and Orochimaru with it was slowly disappearing into the air, until nothing was there. And all that was left was rubble. Naruto shut his mouth and stopped doing an impression of a fish. Well, now that's over. He started, mouth wavering a little bit. Oh, my chakra works again. Kurama said happily, chuckling and waving around his tails around, pushing little harmless Baijidamas into the air in glee. Kurama. Naruto turned and sighed, looking over at the area. Naruto motioned to his dreary, gray mindscape which was half in ashes and the other half was wilting, the trench in the ground which was large before had become even wider. The river was darkened and the fishes in it lay dead on the soil. There was barely any surface undamaged, except the corners of the mindscape which still had a few daisies popping from the ground. It takes fucking ages to regrow grass. Naruto sighed in dismay. Naruto fumbled in his seat nervously and adjusted himself until he was comfortable. He sat in a room which was decorated with red and blue, on top of a fluffy bed, with his two teammates staring directly at him in the other side of the room. So, Sasuke drawled out. He was sitting on top of a chair, with his legs separate around the back of the chair. You have some explaining to do. Sakura laughed at that moment, ha. Some. That's the understatement of the year. She finished laughing and then leaned back onto her wardrobe, as she was sitting on the ground. Team 7 were in Sakura's bedroom. This occurred after Naruto was making breakfast in his room, silently and calmly, until he heard someone knock on the door. He curiously went to open it, as he wasn't expecting visitors at 9 in the morning on a Sunday, and he was met with Sakura and Sasuke's blank faces. He was surprised, blinking a couple of times, until Sasuke grabbed his arm and shunshined to Sakura's house, so Naruto wouldn't be able to escape. So? Naruto repeated, about 10 minutes after his capture, when did you learn to shunshin? He asked Sasuke. A while ago, Sasuke replied, but you would have known that, if you bothered to care. He finished. Not that I give a shit or anything. Sakura coughed into her fist, tsundere. What was that? Sasuke muttered. Nothing. Naruto stared at his two teammates. He had missed this. Of course, he had missed this. The Jinchuriki were different people, having different personalities, but none of them were like Sakura or Sasuke, who he knew since he was a child. Of course, half of that time he hated them, but they were teammates. There was a certain bond that only teammates had, and obviously the Jinchuriki were also de facto teammates of his, but Sasuke and Sakura were the originals. Okay. Naruto spoke in resolution. Okay. He repeated. Sakura and Sasuke turned back to him. Sasuke nodded, about time, dobe. Chuckling, Naruto spoke, averting his eyes, bastard. After a bit of giggling and chuckling, the room was filled in silence again. Naruto took a deep breath and rose his head, staring back at his teammates' faces. What do you know about October 10th, the night the Kyuubi attacked? Naruto asked them. Sasuke leaned back. I don't see how this is relevant. Answer the question. Naruto replied. Sakura and Sasuke exchanged glances. Well, Sakura started, turned her eyes back at Naruto. I know that the Kyuubi attacked Konoha, and the fourth Hokage killed it, and he died with it. Isn't that all? Naruto smiled. I thought so too. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. It isn't. Shaking his head, Naruto replied. Not anywhere close. Go on, then. Sakura prompted Naruto. Well, the Kyuubi is a Biju. And there are altogether 9 of them, ranging from the one-tailed Ichibi to the 9-tailed Kyuubi. Naruto explained slowly. Sasuke nodded. Okay. The Biju are made of chakra, which means that they cannot be killed. He left it at that. There was a pregnant silence in the room, until Sakura let out a breath. Well, shit. She spoke. I'm guessing if they aren't killed, but the Yandere managed to make it disappear, it was sealed. Naruto smiled. You're really smart, you know that. Sakura flicked her hair behind her shoulder with a smile. Okay, so the Kyuubi was sealed in something, what does that matter? Sasuke sighed. Not just something, it had to be something with either completely new chakra coils, or an object which has been specially adapted for sealing a Biju in it. Naruto explained. So the Yandere sealed the Kyuubi, in either a baby or an object, why didn't anyone tell us? Sakura asked. Naruto bit his lip and raised his head again. Do you know what a Jinchuriki is? At Sasuke and Sakura's confused expressions, he gave a small sad smile. What's a Jinchuriki? Sakura attempted to pronounce the word. It's a person who has a Biju sealed inside them. Sasuke leaned back slowly as he lifted a hand to push back his bangs from his eyes. Why, are you telling us this? Naruto exhaled, because I'm a Jinchuriki. Sakura and Sasuke froze. So is Gaara. Sasuke's eyes grew wider, and Sakura lifted a hand to her mouth, and Yagura. He wanted to tell them about the Jinchuriki that they had met. You have the Kyuubi inside you. Sasuke mumbled. A monster. Sakura whispered. Naruto felt his world come crashing down. All of his childhood came rushing back to him, all of the lies and the insults and the abuse came rushing back to him, and he didn't want to deal with it again. He thought he didn't have to deal with it again. This was what he didn't want. He didn't want his friends to see him as a monster and an unnatural being who the fuck cares? Sakura shrugged. Naruto blinked. Wait, what? Who gives a shit if you have the most powerful chakra beast living inside you? I can see why idiots would be stupid, and maybe that was why you were called a monster when you were young, but most of them aren't ninja, are they? Sasuke spoke, swinging his legs on the chair. Ninja should know the difference. If a kunai is sealed in a scroll, does that make the scroll a kunai? Hell no. Sakura laughed at the sheer stupidity of some of the people in their village. Wait, I swear most of them were ninjas though. What the hell? Fucking idiots, all of them. Sasuke mumbled, his voice being muffled by his arm, since he was leaning on it. Naruto continued blinking, silently. You alright there, Naruto? Sakura asked. No response. Hello. Sasuke waved a hand in the air, trying to snap their blonde Jinchuriki friend out of whatever trance he was in. Silence, and Naruto continued staring with a blank expression at his teammates. Yeah, that's getting kind of scary now. Sasuke adjusted himself on the chair. Naruto opened his mouth, and then snapped it close again, narrowing his eyes in thought. His teammates allowed him to sit in silence for a couple of minutes, because obviously he was expecting another kind of response and Sasuke and Sakura hadn't given that one to him. Want some biscuits? Sakura asked Sasuke at one point. That would be great. Sasuke nodded. It would. Naruto finally spoke. They turned to look at him and grinned at Naruto's peaceful expression. Sakura nodded and walked out of the room to grab some biscuits for the team to munch on while listening to Naruto. That's not all, is it? Sasuke questioned the blonde. Naruto shook his head. Nowhere near it. They waited for Sakura to come back, and once she did, she tossed some biscuits to Naruto, who caught them with ease, and some to Sasuke, leaving a few for her. Continue. Sakura said. Naruto nodded. Yeah, so around the time of our graduation, I found out that there were other Jinchuuriki. The Kyuubi talks to me, you see. Wait, the almighty Kyuubi no Kitsune talks to you? Sasuke rose a hand to silence him. Yeah, he's not bad actually. He's sleeping right now though. Sakura nodded, nice one. Naruto continued, so I got in contact with all 8 other Jinchuuriki, and we've been making plans. He didn't know whether he should tell his teammates about the plans, it may be too much. What plans? Sasuke asked. Naruto sighed, a Jinchuuriki Alliance. Which entails. I'm not sure yet, but we're going to work together to make the world a better place for the Jinchuuriki and defeat the Akatsuki, who are trying to capture us. Naruto told them. When did you talk to all of the Jinchuuriki? Sakura asked. Wait, Akatsuki? That organization of powerful ninja? They're trying to capture you. Sasuke's eyes widened, he knew that his brother Itachi was part of the Akatsuki, because Kakashi had told him. What was the point of leaving it unrevealed? Yeah, they want to take over the world. And about a week ago, during the festival. Naruto replied. But you were with us, during the festival. Clone. Ah. Naruto flexed his fingers, and took another bite into the biscuit. The Sound and Sond are also going to attack Konoha during the final part of the Chunin exams. But I thought Gaara. Naruto nodded and interrupted, Gaara was the one who told us. We are going to be prepared for the invasion. Sasuke allowed a small smile to grace his lips. This is great. Sakura and Naruto turned to him, seeing his satisfied expression, and Sakura raised an eyebrow. It is. Naruto laughed, this finally puts my soul at rest. He slapped a hand onto his heart and chuckled. They continued eating the biscuits and talking about the other Jinchuuriki, and how Naruto destroyed the cursed seal mark, because a demon curse can only be undone by another demon. Sakura and Sasuke were shocked when Naruto sheepishly told them that he was the leader of the Jinchuuriki, because they thought it would be Yagura or someone else, not their teammate, but they understood why the other Jinchuuriki chose him. Naruto was the one who made contact, and he was the one who was quickly becoming stronger, so it wasn't very difficult to figure out why he was chosen to lead the Jinchuuriki and their Biju. He was host to the strongest tailed beast after all. I want to help. It came in the middle of a lighthearted conversation, which made Sasuke wonder why he dropped a comment as heavy as he did, while everything was pleasant. What? Naruto blinked. The Jinchuuriki Alliance. I want to help. He repeated. Sakura tilted her head and nodded, yeah. Yeah. If that team from Kiri can help, and Fu's teammates are a part of it, we want to be part of it too. Naruto blinked, I don't think you understand, you are already a part of it, you know everything. Yeah, we know everything, but you Jinchuurikis can't always walk around in daylight without arousing suspicion. Which is where Sakura and I come in. Sasuke waved a hand and motioned to Sakura and himself. But you will be put in so much danger. We're Shinobi, Naruto. Sakura interrupted. Danger is our job. Naruto stared at them and then let out a shaky breath. Well, I would try and stop you, but you two have already made up your minds. Glad to see you realized. Sasuke smirked. Sakura giggled and grinned. Smiling, Naruto rested a hand under his chin. Welcome to the Jinchuriki Alliance, Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura. The day of the finals had finally arrived. After the explanation that Naruto gave to Sasuke and Sakura, he had asked Yagura to train him, and then buckled down and trained like his life depended on it, which, to a certain extent, it did. Yagura had taught him quite a few things, as well as supplied him with 2 knuckle blades which he was taught to use. What are these for? Naruto tilted his head and questioned Yagura. Yagura crossed his arms. I don't have wind-natured chakra, so I can't help you much with jutsu, but I do know that those blades can help you. He spoke. They are specially designed metal, which can enforce your wind-natured chakra. Naruto grinned. How do I use them? Just pour my chakra in them. Yes, Yagura nodded. Concentrate and leak your chakra into them. Naruto stared at the dark-colored knuckle blades and allowed his chakra to seep through his skin and fingertips, leaking into the blades. Eventually, they started to glow and a faint outline of his chakra was noticeable around the metal. Yagura clapped his hands together. Very good. Naruto smirked in appreciation. It was nothing, he waved his hand. Now, Yagura said, making Naruto look back at him in curiosity. Yagura held up his staff and bent his knees, and jumped at Naruto. Defend yourself. Naruto shivered at the thought of those 2 weeks which Yagura had taken over his life with. He had been punched, kicked, thrown, strangled, hit and slapped with that damned staff so many times that he was close to screaming out in exasperation. But he couldn't deny the results. By training for 2 weeks, and sleeping for only a quarter of it, his muscles had been toned and his skills had been polished. He had been trained by a Kage who had been the strongest ninja in his village since he was a child, genes the fact that he had been put in the Kage position at a young age. So yeah, he was stronger. Naruto cringed. That staff is the bane of my existence, and the thing of nightmares. Damn straight. Kyuubi muttered. Naruto, and the rest of Team 7, waited by the entrance gate of the Chunin exam finals. Sakura was holding a banner, and was grinning as Naruto and Sasuke sheepishly rubbed the back of their heads. I need Hinata to help me hold this up. Sakura clapped her hands together in glee. It's going to be great. You'd better win. Sasuke scoffed. Do you doubt us? I doubt your ability to think in battle, yes. Sakura replied. Naruto started to laugh, and then stopped, heads up. He whispered quietly. Snapping his eyes open, Sasuke lifted his hand and caught a kunai with his forefinger. Turning his head, he scowled as Kakashi stalked forward with his hands in his pockets. I taught you well, Sasuke. Naruto rolled his eyes, not finding the reasoning in Kakashi's surprise attack on Sasuke. It was like it was trying to show off. Well, Naruto had been taught by a Kage, so he had the upper hand anyway. Yes, fantastic. Can we go inside now? Sakura questioned with a raised eyebrow. Of course, Sakura. Kakashi nodded. As Sasuke and Sakura started to walk forward, Kakashi caught Naruto by the shoulder and pulled him back slightly. Naruto jerked his shoulder away from Kakashi's hand and raised his chin to meet his sensei's eyes. Yes? What can I do for you? He smiled sarcastically. Kakashi ignored the blatant disrespect. I wanted to apologize. Naruto nodded, apology accepted. And he turned to continue walking, only for his shoulder to be grabbed again. He sighed, yes. Raising an eyebrow, Kakashi tapped his neck. The cursed mark, how is it? Naruto shrugged, all gone. Funny. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto replied, seriously. But it can't be removed. Kakashi hissed at him, disbelieving at the notion that the mark could just vanish. By a human, it can't. Naruto replied. But you're forgetting I have a demon inside me, only a demon can destroy a demon-cursed seal. Kakashi let go of Naruto's shoulder in silence, and Naruto brushed off his shoulder in thanks. Okay. Kakashi said simply. Let's get going. He didn't say anything more on the topic, and although that was strange to Naruto, he didn't question it. Kakashi and Naruto caught up with Sasuke and Sakura, who just rolled her eyes and told them to not keep them waiting. Sasuke smirked once they were all in a line again. Now, let's kick some ninja ass. Genma Shiranui took a thin toothpick out of his pocket and clamped it between his teeth. Why did I have to be stuck doing the finals of the exams? He wondered bitterly. He was a busy man, being a jonin and all, he didn't have the time to be a proctor. In the middle of the arena, there was a line of 8 genin, standing and facing the spectators. Naruto stood in the middle of the row of genins, with Sasuke on one side and Fu on his other side. So many people. The Kyuumo genin, Senna, muttered. Fu grinned at him, I know right. Isn't it exciting? She giggled and hummed happily. Sasuke exhaled, I just want to get to my match already. He muttered. But probably not even going to get to it, to be honest. He thought, thinking about the fact that Konoha was going to be attacked. With a smirk, Naruto crossed his arms, it's going to be fun. Fun? Kaoru laughed, from the other side of the line. This is going to be deadly. He smirked, it's going to be more than fun. Your psychopathy is showing, Kaoru. Haru chuckled quietly. Kaoru just grinned at him and swung his arm across the other's shoulders, and attempting to do the same to Akihiko. Akihiko slapped Kaoru's hand away, don't touch me, your idiocy may be contagious. He teased, causing Haru to laugh and Kaoru to pout. You lot, Genma snapped, shut up and stop looking around. He told them. The genin blinked in confusion until Fu asked why. Stand up straight and face the audience. He said simply. Kaoru tilted his head and dropped his arm from Haru's shoulder. At that moment, all of the genin did what Genma said, stood up straight and faced the spectators. There was a quiet rumble of chatter, until it was made into full-blown clapping and cheering. The anticipation and tension was thick. The arena was packed with people. Of course, there would be a lot of people. It was one of the first times in a while that there were ninja from almost every hidden village, Kyuumo, Konoha, Kiri, Taki and Iwa, participating in the Chunin exams. The only teams who didn't go through to the finals were the Suna team and the Oto team. Of course, Gaara, Temari and Kankuro could have easily gotten through, all three of them could have, without much effort, but it wasn't in the plans that Naruto made, and it wouldn't allow other Jinchuriki to enter the village, as there would be an odd number of teams. The team from Otogakure were under Orochimaru's command, so it wasn't preferable to let them enter the finals. However, Gaara had informed Naruto and the other Jinchuriki that the Snake Sannin was already in the village, and will attack during the finals. Ladies and gentlemen. A low voice was clearly heard once the cheering had quietened down. Multiple people had turned to face the source of the voice, the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. Thank you for coming to watch Konoha's Chunin exam finals. Another loud cheer erupted from the audience. Hinata-chan. Help me, quickly. Sakura yelled from the spectators' benches. You too, Akane. The redhead and the pale, lavender-eyed girls. Hinata nodded hesitantly and grabbed the other side of the banner that Sakura was thrusting out for her to hold. Okay, on 3, scream what I told you to earlier. Hinata nodded. 1. 2. Akane whispered. 3. Sakura grinned. They then lifted the banner high in the air and shouted, kick some ninja ass. The banner that they were holding clearly had printed on it. Beat them to the ground. Sasuke and Naruto. Wah. Naruto mumbled, and then shouted, shit. Then proceeded to laugh loudly. Sasuke looked at him, questioning, and then followed Naruto's line of sight, where he then chuckled and smirked. Of course. Of course, Sakura would do something like this. I want a banner. Fu huffed. I want fangirls. Akihiko rolled his eyes and said quietly. Kaoru and Haru grinned and glanced at each other. Genma wanted to stab himself from the utter stupidity that he was close to. He sighed and tightened his bandana. Okay kids, he said, and turned to them. Although the landscape is different, the rules are the same, there are no rules. He was surprised when none of the genin flinched or wavered, they all looked ready to fight. Bloodthirsty little shits, he thought. The match will only end when someone dies, or gives up. Again, none flinched. But if I decide the match is over, I will stop the match. No arguing, or I will put you down, he threatened. I'd like to see you try. Haru tilted his head and said with a blank face. Genma frowned, don't tempt me, kid. Akihiko scoffed and turned his head. Thrusting his hands into his pockets, Genma looked at the whole group again. The first match will now start. Everyone but Senna of Kyumo, and Kaoru of Kiri, get out of the arena grounds. At this statement, Sasuke and Naruto walked forward, heading to the stairs, where they would be led to the competitor's box, while Fu patted Senna on the back and wished him good luck. Senna thanked her and smiled, wondering why a girl he had just met was wishing him good luck, but didn't question it much. Haru ruffled Kaoru's hair and smiled softly, before he whispered in the clown's ear something which made the latter blush bright red, and he smacked Haru's head in embarrassment. Akihiko rolled his eyes and grabbed Haru, dragging him away from the raven-haired boy. Once Naruto and Sasuke had reached the competitor's box, Naruto looked over at the other side of the stadium and caught Yagura's eye. He nodded to him in greeting, and Yagura nodded back. Looks like a lot of the Kages are here, Sasuke said to Naruto. I doubt Orochimaru was anticipating that, since it wasn't going to originally happen, but you made Yagura and A insist. Naruto nodded, which will make the invasion even easier to win. Sasuke agreed and they took their seats, watching as the rest of the competitors started walking to the box as well. I haven't seen you in a while, Mizukage-sama. The Kazekage, who was in actuality Orochimaru, mentioned to him. He was very displeased over the fact that more people were ruining his plans, and the largest factor that was forming was the fact that the problem was one group of individuals, the Jinchuriki. Yes, well, the civil war has been put on hold as I discuss future plans with Mei Terumi. Yagura said simply, eyes connecting with Utakata, who stepped behind him. He knew Orochimaru's chakra signature when he sensed it. It was surprising that the Hokage hadn't realized it yet, but obviously, Sarutobi was getting old. Which was unfortunate, because he was once called the Professor. This is definitely a meeting which was long overdue. A, the Raikage, nodded. Killer Bee and Yugito were standing behind A, eyes scanning through the crowd for possible targets to kill once the invasion starts. It was better to start early. Hiruzen hummed in agreement, indeed. A shame that Hizen-sama and Oanoki-sama couldn't come. He referenced Taki's village leader and the Tsukikage. Orochimaru, in the Kazekage's disguise, smiled, yes, very unfortunate. But more helpful to me. Yagura scowled and creased his nose. It stinks of snake. How revolting, he thought. About time for it to begin, yes? A questioned. Hiruzen nodded. Utakata leaned on the wall behind the Kages, exhaling and turning his head to the side, smirking at Yugito and B. Okay, roll call. Utakata thought mentally. Yugito and B, who were next to him, blinked, as they heard Utakata's voice in their minds, but did not respond verbally. It would be suspicious if they did. It's Naruto, long time no here. The Jinchurikis heard Naruto's voice say, obviously with a little smile. I'm in the competitor's box. Foof here. I'm with him. The mint-haired girl said into the Jinchuriki mental connection. B and I are behind the Kages. As is Utakata. Yugito's silky voice said smoothly. I'm with the other Kages. Yagura said simply. Hello, Gaara's voice resounded, I'm in the audience. They waited for a bit for the mental connection to travel across the land. Roshi here. Some of the Jinchuriki thanked the strength of their chakra for traveling that far. I'm about 50 meters away from the Konoha gate. As am I, Han's deep voice spoke. My Kyuri team are also in the competitors' box. Yagura added. Naruto nodded. Akane is in the audience. Yagura leaned back in his seat, looking at Sarutobi, who nodded and stood. The Hokage projected his voice and looked out into the arena floor. Now, start the first match. Silence reigned over the large arena as the two male shinobi stood in silence, staring at each other with hardened expressions on their faces. It was common knowledge that in a battle, the one who moves first would be at an advantage, although it injures pride for not being able to stay still and patient. Many shinobi knew this, however, civilians didn't know this, so they were muttering to themselves and their peers, wondering why the two ninja, who were meant to be fighting against each other, were motionless. Why don't they just fight? A bulky civilian male questioned, his patience wearing thin. I came to see a fight. Many civilians murmured in agreement. A few seats away, Akane rolled her eyes and turned to look at him. This is why you are a civilian, and we are ninja. Hinata muffled a snicker with her hand and giggled softly, while Sakura laughed loudly. Eventually, Kaoru couldn't wait anymore, he wanted the fight over and done with. Plus, he knew that Senna was quick. Very quick. He was a taijutsu user who relied on his speed to beat his opponent, so thinking about it, if Kaoru moved first, he would be able to outrun the shorter brunette. Kaoru's genjutsu worked when an opponent makes eye contact with him, so he assumed that Senna was already susceptible to his genjutsu. He tilted his head and narrowed his eyes. No, Kaoru thought. He's not looking at me. True enough, Senna was looking at Kaoru, but not into his eyes. Senna was staring in the middle of Kaoru's eyebrows, which granted the illusion that he was looking at him, but in reality, if he continued looking where he was looking, the forehead, he was safe from the genjutsu. Interesting. Kaoru spoke with a smirk. The clown-marked Kyuri ninja jumped forward and flipped his cards out, and in a split second threw them at Senna, aiming for all areas of his body, his head, torso and legs. Thinking that it would be easy, because Senna was simply just standing there, staring at him with a blank expression, he thought that it would be simple. The silhouette of Senna vanished a split second before the cards made their way to impale him, and Kaoru was on guard for an attack from behind as he felt a tiny disruption in the air a few meters away from his back. Spinning in the air, he dropped to the ground and boosted himself on the concrete and threw a punch at the shorter boy. Senna, again, vanished in a split second and from the other side of Kaoru, threw a barrage of kunai and shuriken at the clown. Kaoru caught two kunai, and used them to block the other shuriken that was attacking him. I apologize for not looking into your eyes, I know it's rude. Senna said with a smile, politely. However, I know that if I do, I will be caught in your genjutsu. He justified. Kaoru raised an eyebrow in amusement, humans are strange creatures. He said to Senna. We demand obedience and submission by enforcing eye contact. The wind slowly pushed his dark hair into his eyes, until he flicked his head to the side and his locks were caught behind his ear. I take no offense. I'm glad to hear that. Senna replied curtly. Yagura-sama, I have never seen a ninja fight with cards before. Hiruzen noted. Nodding, the young Mizukage answered, yes, the cards are artifacts from Kaoru's family history. He had them restored to suit his needs, I believe. The young Senna boy is also very talented. The Kazekage commented. And I think he is still wearing wrist weights, Asama. A leaned back in his seat, well, they are both talented for their age, we shall see if they are good enough to become chunin as the fight progresses. The other Kages nodded and continued watching the fight. All enjoying a bit of action and calculating in their minds if they would make good chunin. All except the Kazekage, who was in reality, Orochimaru. He was timing his invasion silently. Senna threw a punch at Kaoru, who ducked and they both jumped away from each other, releasing an array of weapons at each other. The taijutsu user pulled an invisible string as weapons from every direction attacked Kaoru, who was surprised for a second, and then span with a kunai and blocked them all. The wind from his spin forced them all away from his body. They paused to stare at each other, calculating their other moves, trying to see in the future for what else would occur during their fight. Kaoru sighed, "It's just." He ran a hand through his hair, a bit disappointing. A breath was audible, "How so?" Senna questioned curiously, eyes still on Kaoru's forehead. Kaoru pursed his lips, with a mocking sad expression. "Because you're going to look at me eventually." The ground rumbled under Senna's feet, and his eyes widened as he jumped up and away. "I didn't even notice dash." The sound of metal cutting through the air filled Senna's senses as he pulled 2 kunai out of his pockets, and an ugly clang sound was heard as the attacking Fuma shuriken hit his kunai. He grit his teeth as he pushed his arms out and made the massive shuriken fly away from him. As Senna exhaled from the force of the large, four-bladed shuriken attack as he appeared behind Kaoru and ducked to sweep the clown off his feet. Kaoru grabbed Senna's leg and threw him, using chakra as a force of strength. Senna back flipped in the air and landed softly on the ground. The taijutsu user felt a shiver crawl up his spine as he turned around, faced with Kaoru, who was standing in front of him with a warped and cruel grin. "Boo!" Senna momentarily forgot about the phrase, eye contact, as he turned to lift his arm to punch Kaoru and jump away, until he felt that he couldn't lift his arm at all. He was trapped in the genjutsu. The audience stopped and stared at the impending fight in the arena. "He's not moving!" Someone shouted out. "Why isn't he moving?" Another civilian wondered out loud. All of the shinobi sighed and placed their heads in their hands in complete and utter defeat. You would think that civilians would know, maybe, a little bit, about ninja techniques. Kotetsu chuckled, turning to look at Izumo, who was rolling his eyes. Hinata, who was with Sakura and Akane, fiddled with the banner that they had put onto the ground while the other fights were occurring. "Who do you think will win, Sakura-chan?" she asked. Sakura exhaled, "Well, Senna is in Kaoru's genjutsu, so I think it will be over soon." Akane nodded and propped her chin on her fist. "Kaoru's going to win." Sasuke leaned his head on the wall behind him. "I've never really tried genjutsu," he said out loud. Naruto raised an eyebrow in amusement. "You're an Uchiha," he said. "Uchihas are known for their genjutsu." He let out a laugh while Sasuke shrugged. "I was never taught genjutsu before the massacre." Naruto didn't question how easily Sasuke brought up the Uchiha massacre. It was interesting how, in the past, he spoke of the massacre with a low voice and anger. But now, he seemed calmer. Sasuke still hadn't forgiven Itachi, though, for murdering his whole family, but he did know that Itachi loved his family with every inch of his heart, and the real question that haunted Sasuke's mind was, why? "You should learn, you have the Sharingan, maybe you can ask Kakashi to teach you." Naruto pondered, his eyes still on the fight in the arena. Sasuke shook his head. "Nah, Kakashi doesn't use much genjutsu," he replied. "Maybe I can ask Kurenai instead. You know, Team 8's sensei." With Naruto's nod, Sasuke drew his eyes back onto the battle in the arena too. "You're in my genjutsu." Senna clawed at his throat, feeling vines grab him and twist their way around his body tightly. He coughed and gurgled, attempting to draw out his chakra to force his way out of the vines. He widened his eyes as he looked around him. There was nothing but pitch black in his peripheral vision. His pupils dilated and his teeth grit as he was dragged upwards by the vines. He pulled and thrashed around. Quickly he was thrown upside down, and a tree appeared behind him, as he hanged from the strong branch. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't breathe and he was upside down and his blood was rushing to his head and... "The hanged man has a few meanings." Kaoru's voice spoke smoothly in the dark-colored universe. "It reflects a need to suspend action," the voice continued. Senna felt the vine around his leg tighten as he used all his core strength to arch his back and lift himself to the vine around his ankle. He fiddled with it until a force dragged him back down to hang with his arms limp. But it also simply can make you hang from the tree for 10 years. Senna felt his body start to heat up and his brain felt like it was on fire. "Each second in reality is a month in my world." He couldn't take it. He lifted his hands and attempted to get out of the genjutsu. Kai, he spoke, with his hands in the correct sign. Nothing happened. In reality, the audience were staring at Senna's immobile figure, and Kaoru was smiling at him. Senna's blank eyes were still staring at the dark-haired clown. With a grin, Kaoru lifted a card. A picture of a man, hanging upside down from a tree, was drawn onto it. He looked up to the audience and smiled. "Lependu," he said, his lips curling into a smile, "the hanged man." The cards that Kaoru had were special. They were specialized tarot cards, which had his chakra in them. When he caught someone in his genjutsu, he could choose which card he wanted to draw the victim into. Senna was caught in the Lependu, the hanged man, card. There were others, of course, such as La Mort, death, and Le Diable, the devil. It was great fun. Tilting his head, Kaoru smiled and let go of the tarot card in his fingers, and allowed it to flutter to the ground. As it fell to the ground, he mouthed a word and it burst into flames as it burned and dropped to the ground. As the card burned to a crisp, Senna's knees gave way and he fell in a crumpled heap to the ground. Eyes still half open, with his pupils dilated and his mouth ajar. His head hit the floor with a sickening crack as the ground beneath his head broke a little bit. There was nothing but silence. Genma raised his hand. "Winner, Kaoru of Kiri." Kaoru shut his eyes and smiled in content from his win. He let out a breath and started walking forward to the competitor's box. Suddenly, a cheer was heard from above. Kaoru looked up and was met by loud clapping, and the whole arena was shouting and cheering for him. He stood in shock and silence as every member of the audience grinned and smacked their hands together, appreciating his skill and his win. The sound in the stadium was deafening. Indeed, this was a strange match with skills unseen before, and to ninja and civilians alike, it was very entertaining to watch. Kaoru realized that his mouth was open in awe as he was staring at the spectators. He shut it and then ducked his head down, a blush going over his cheeks. He hid his eyes with his hair and walked slowly to the other competitors. A stretcher was called for Senna, who was still unconscious, and they whisked the brown-haired boy up and pushed him away from the arena grounds, into the medical center. "He'll be fine in a few hours," Kaoru yelled after the medic Nins. He made his way to the box, where the other ninja were, and once he entered the room, Akihiko and Haru instantly grabbed his arms and hair, ruffling it and grinning, telling him continuously, "Good job," and "Nice match." Naruto and Sasuke watched with a small smirk as Kaoru got flustered and eventually slapped their hands away, telling them that he wanted to sit down and they should get the fuck out of his way, otherwise he'll get liable to burn them in hell. "Hey!" Naruto yelled. The three Kiri ninja stopped and turned to look at him. Naruto smirked. "Good job," he said. And he meant it. Kaoru was strong, and he beat Senna in a good match. It was definitely an advantage that he had the Kiri ninja on his side, and the Jinchuriki side. Kaoru grinned. "Thanks." Haru stared at Kaoru's grin and silently grabbed his arm. At Kaoru's surprised yelp and expression, Haru dragged him away from the room. "Where are they going?" Fu tilted her head and asked curiously. Akihiko cringed. "You don't want to know," he said, shivering. Naruto raised his eyebrows exaggeratedly and patted Fu's head, while she tilted it and glanced at the blonde Jinchuriki with a questioning expression. Naruto shook his head and looked at Sasuke, who was blinking with a blank face. Naruto watched as Sasuke's face slowly went pink in embarrassment. Naruto laughed at him and his innocence. "Oi!" Genma walked into the room. "Fu and Akihiko, you guys are up." He left the room. Fu straightened her head and a grin crawled across her face. She turned to look at the silver-haired male with a smile. Akihiko just stared at her with a blank face, nodding in respect. "I don't want to hurt you, Yagura-sama told me that you are part of the team." Akihiko spoke. Fu nodded, beaming. "I am. I'm a Jinchuriki too, I don't want to hurt you either." "Jinchuriki, do you hear me?" The two Jinchuriki in the competitor's box blinked and glanced at each other, registering Gaara's voice in their minds. "Gaara!" Naruto said out loud, notifying Sasuke and the Kiri team. He then connected to the mental link and said in response, "What is it? What's happened?" Yagura's voice resonated in all the brains of the Jinchuriki. "Are you okay?" Yugito questioned. Fu looked worriedly at Naruto. "Fu! Akihiko!" Genma yelled again. "Get to the arena!" Naruto and Fu refused to move before they heard Gaara's response. Akihiko was prepared to leave, but there was obviously something wrong with the people he was supposed to be guarding. "What's wrong?" Sasuke asked in curiosity. "Did something happen?" Akihiko glanced at Haru and Kaoru, and then back at the blonde Jinchuriki. "Is everything okay?" "I don't know." Naruto growled in annoyance, snapping at the other ninja. "I'm okay." Gaara replied quickly. Breathing a sigh of relief, Naruto nodded at the other ninja in the room in reassurance. "But I need to inform you all of something," he reported. Leaning on the wall behind him, Naruto narrowed his eyes. "Go on." Orochimaru sent out the signal, the Shikaka Jinchuriki said gravely. "The invasion is going to occur in 1 minute." Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this what if and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. See you in the next video. Peace.